My name is Paul Richardson Tate. I was born September the 16th, 1959. It's a long time ago, in Long Beach, California. My mom and dad were both from Ripley, and dad was in the Navy when I was born. Uh, what else? My mother's name is Mary Sue Tate. My father's name was Gene Perry Tate. I have two brothers, Steve Tate and John Tate, and a sister, Laura. Uh, Most of my memories of growing up are in New Albany. We did live in Ripley when I was really, really small, and I think Oxford when my dad was in graduate school, but basically remember New Albany. Pretty typical upbringing. I think in '69, my mom and dad bought the big white Victorian house on Main Street. So that's where I started the third grade. Um, and my best friend was David Gaines, whose father was the sheriff back during those years. The kids of the sheriff lived at the jail, so we all were. He had a brother, and all of me and my brothers played with them, and we'd go over and have spend the night at the jail. It was so, and then every now and then we'd go upstairs and talk to the prisoners. So I just had a pretty typical childhood. A bit third grade.
That was third.
No, actually, I started kindergarten in Albany. We lived out closer to Myrtle, and then there was a time right in that middle '60s where the area where we lived was annexed, or either they figured out with the school system that from a certain point, I guess it was city limits because we were technically outside the city limits, so we were going to have to go to school in Myrtle, and my dad worked in New Albany, so we ended up moving to New Albany.
What your parents do?
My dad was CPA. He was one of the founding members of Nell McKinney Tate and Tupelo. That I was Tupelo, New Albany, Amory, I think. I knew, you know.
Did your mom work?
No, she's basically a housewife. She was schooled in good bit of training in music and teaching. So I think she subbed some when I was growing up, but for the most part, she just stayed at home.
And you said she had some schooling in music?
Well, I don't know if she. I don't remember. I don't know if she's ever told me what her degree was in actually, but she went to Belhaven and to Bloom Mountain. She was involved in plays and musicals and things like that. But I'm not sure exactly what her. I think it was elementary education was her degree. It's hard to be completely honest. Like my wife and I are completely different. I remember things from a long, long time ago, and she didn't remember anything till the fifth grade or something. Some of my very first memories are sound. I can remember what I perceived not to be in a crib and hearing these women singing that scared me. Um, but I can just remember, that's almost my very first memory of hearing to me, it's my memory of it now would be some sort of jazz standard with women singing in the background. So it's just, I just remember being really moved by sound as a small child. Kind of hard to explain. Would be at my mother's down at the feet of the piano in Ripley. Back then when we only had one channel on television or whatever. It seems like every Sunday we would go to one of the grandparents in Ripley. And some of my earliest memories of what you do after dinner, you'd either sit and talk or you go around the piano and sing. So some of the very first memories I have of that, and my uncle and my grandmother and my mother's sisters and my dad. Everybody would they were Presbyterian, but I remember it was a Baptist hymnal, and everybody would pick parts and they would sing. And I can remember being down at the playing with my mother's feet as she did the pedals with my hands, and her gently kicking me from time to time. So it was very, very, very early. I don't know. I started probably taking lessons in the second or third grade, I guess. Back when when they offered piano to kids in elementary school. I don't know how long they did that for. But there were several of us. The teacher would come and get us once a week out of our class, and we'd go to piano lessons.
It was during school.
It really was. Yeah.
Who was the teacher?
Gosh, I don't remember. She taught ukulele too, so she taught me how to play the ukulele a little. So this was all in that second, third, fourth grade general area.
What school would that have been?
In New Albany.
Here at
The
this side of town?
it was the old one that was where the middle school is now.
Okay. Was that your choice to take these piano lessons?
I don't remember. I remember not really liking the piano lesson part. When I was in the 6th or 7th grade, now I'm not sure my friends will know exactly, but I can't remember exactly. David Gaines, again, who was the sheriff's son, they were from Myrtle, and there was a lady out there that was teaching guitar lessons, Marie Irwin. And so David's mother talked to my mother, and the two of us, and maybe maybe my younger brother started taking lessons from her. And that's when it really clicked for me. We were very fortunate that she made us all. I think I'd learned to read music primarily through church choir, but she got us in a room and we learned how to read music on the guitar. We'd do that for 10 or 15 minutes each. And then at the end, we would get in a big room and she had a piano, a drum set, bass guitar, and we would jam. So whatever was on the radio that we wanted to play, we would either figure it out or she would help us, and we would learn these songs. And I remember I'd played piano with her, since whenever I started, and she showed me how to make chords on the piano rather than play the music. She said, she went loud. So Paul, you basically have major chords and minor chords and 7 chords. And she said, to make a major chord, you put your finger down and you count up 4, and then you count up 3, and you got a major triad. And I just remember it just clicking on a light. I'm going, oh, so I can play with the guitars and stuff and just play these kind of chords. So I just almost really quickly could play what I was doing on the guitar. I could play it on the piano too. So from trying to play records and stuff and the popular music that we were wanting to play to have a band. So
your music lessons were almost like you have a little band.
That was the primary lesson. yeah, it really was, and they were into the teacher was into country music, so we learned all like country music and Creedence Clearwater, which was on the radio. So all those songs we learned how to play, and then we'd take turns. One of us would try to get on the drums, and we kept mixed it up as far as what instruments we played. So I learned how to play bass and everything in a tight little window of time there.
When you were doing that at that stage, was there one instrument that you thought, okay, this is really mine?
No, that's been one of my. I think until the last major gig I got, the Thacker Mountain Radio gig, it's always been a negative to not focus on one instrument, because through school and through college and everything, it was like, pick a major instrument and study it. I could never do it. I wanted to do everything. And so my attention span was so short that I'd get interested in one thing and learn how to play it. And then when that wore off, I'd move to something else or different styles or whatever it was. So it's been until this gig with Thacker, where the Paramount premium for me is being able to do as many different genres as you can do, because you may do a jazz song and you may do a country song on the same show, or you may be backing up people that are doing reggae or whatever. So the premium is on variety, which is kind of rare in the music business. I don't know how to say it. I found that there's 2 types of people that are musicians. There are those who are technicians of instruments, and there are those people who are musicians. And the ones who are musicians are going to find a way to create, and that's all they want to do is create. Others may be great at it, may be great at the instrument. They look at it more like people look at the eye picture, looking at an 8 to 5 job. This is what I do. I get my money playing this. I'm a guitar player. I'll come in and play what you want me to play. And then there are those of us who are musicians, and it's just the need to create is so strong that it really, it may sound what's the word? Um, Gosh, exaggerated, but it almost is like it's life itself to create.
Like you feel sick if you haven't created.
There's something empty without it. There really is. Yeah. Oftentimes now it's that I've got something I have to do, and I've heard other. You ever? I don't know if you get that way too. If there's a project you have to do, there's this germinating process, and then this is so weird. I tell my wife this all the time. It's like it's already done ahead of time. In doing it, it's like it's. I don't know how to explain this. This is interesting. I'm glad you asked me. But figuring out what I'm going to do and figuring out the basic template beforehand almost writes itself. I'll give you an example. I'm on the radio show and I have 3 songs every week I have to do to have ready. Have to have it charted for other people to play, and maybe more than that. And then there's that period of trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Once I figure out what I'm going to do, it's over. It just does itself. It's hard to explain. There's work involved, but it's like that germinating process. When it gets completed in my mind, it's just a matter of writing it down. So it's very odd. So to someone observing, they would think I see him on the computer typing all these charts, but I did that in my mind a day ago, and I'm just watching it unfold. It's an interesting process. It's interesting.
Do you write a lot of music?
Yeah, I have in the past a lot. I'm writing more now because things are slowing down. So I've got a little group, some guys that I'm playing with right now. It's the same guys that played at the church the other night. But we're doing a trio of just jazz guitar, upright bass, and drums. And so I've got a lot of tunes that I've written in the past that really go well with that format. So
when you're working with those 2 other guys, how are you communicating? Do they have the music? Have you written the music for them, or is it a matter of, are you almost in a jam session as you perform?
It depends on what the genre is. If it's like the Thacker Mountain thing where you've got a piece of music and it's got to be X amount of time period, that's all written out. There may be sections, but you say, here's this template of these chord changes, and you're welcome to play whatever you want to play over it. So that kind of thing is like what we did the other night in really traditional jazz. Is you'll have a template of a song with a set of chord changes and a melody over it, and you'll go through it multiple times, and the form is the guide. What you do, the space in between all of that is hopefully being created on the spur of the moment, even though there is a template within that. Obviously, unless I don't know if a lot of people know, I would listen to free jazz. For free jazz, there's no rules, period. And to most of us, it sounds like just utter nonsense and chaos. In traditional jazz, you'll have a melody and a set of chord changes that everybody agrees on. But what happens, how it starts and finishes, and now there are times where you work on those kind of things and decide. But for the most part, that's why jazz is so appealing to me, is that it's being created on the spot.
Do you think that of all the genres of music, jazz is the most free?
Oh yeah, for sure. Other than just, I guess that could be any kind of improvisational music. I've heard people playing those Native American flutes that sound like they're doing the same thing, whatever. So it really could be anything. But I mean, jazz lends itself to that. Yeah, a small church thing or small funeral. Funeral may be the worst. Weddings too, really scary. That's the only time anymore I get really, really, really nervous because you think, what if I screw this up really bad and it's the person's wedding or it's a funeral and the family's gonna remember that.
What's the most fun funeral you've ever performed for? Or have you?
Oh, I've never done a New Orleans one, which I would love to. No, I don't think any of them have been fun that I've done. Some jazz and some classical,
You don't have your funeral planned,
not music wise.
but otherwise?
No, I think I just told my wife there's a couple of friends that she needs to consult about the music choices.
Don't just pick
Please
yourself.
don't do it yourself.
What would be the thing that would make you come back and haunt everybody if they played?
Like Jimmy Buffett. Our Mustang Sally.
Yeah. Same
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope everybody takes note of that.
I do
No
too.
Jimmy Buffett or Mustang Sally at your
Please,
funeral.
please. A little bit, yeah. I do a fair amount at the show. I guess it may be that can make me the most nervous sometimes, just depending on circumstance.
Yeah.
I don't know how long they've been going, since 1997, I think. So it started off, as far as I know, as a kind of a connection with Square Books in Oxford, and they wanted to do a show kind of like what was the PBS show, Prairie Home Companion, that kind of thing, and have music and literary guests. And they had it at Off Square Books forever, and it wasn't on the radio at the time. It started off as just a get together, and then I don't know when PBS came in. Mississippi Public Radio came in and asked if they could air it. So that's been a while. I got the gig just through networking. Having a friend that was in it, and catastrophe happening for them, and having to have somebody to come fill in. So that's really how I got the job.
Is it weekly?
It is, but it's the same. It goes on with the college, or I guess the school schedule. So when the kids are off, we're off.
And where do you record it now?
On Oxford, most of the shows are at the Powerhouse. We've moved over there. And during COVID, we did it outside. But most of the shows now are at the Powerhouse. We did the lyrics sometime, and the Off Square Books occasionally.
So you have a live audience?
Yeah.
And is it an hour?
Yeah, right at an hour. We go a little over usually.
Is there a host?
Yeah.
Who's that?
GMDs.
And do you still have the literary aspect?
Oh yeah.
So each week you have like some author who comes in
And then we'll have two musical guests along with the author. So we'll come in and we'll do a theme. We have a theme song that we do. And then we'll play a couple of songs. We'll do one at the top and one at the bottom. Sometimes we help back up artists, but they'll have two musical guests and a literary guest. Sometimes it's more than two literary guests, or sometimes it's two literary guests. But for the most time, it's two musical guests and a literary guest.
And who organizes this?
Well, it's a nonprofit company, so it's got a lot of people. We got a couple of producers, and then they're in conjunction with Square Books, but knowing ahead who's coming in, they get the people that are coming in for big literary guests, and then they let me know what's happening each week, and we try to correlate music to the literary guests when it's possible. Sometimes it's not.
bet that's fun
If that makes it fun, yeah.
to try and figure out
Yeah.
what to play.
I'm doing some music about private detectives in a few weeks, so that's been fun trying to find some music like that.
What author has been the most fun to try to correlate music with?
It's all about equal, to be honest. I can't really think of one off the top of my head.
Do you have any music that you are currently listening to that inspires you?
There's a guitarist, Julian Lage, that I fixated on right now. He's Lage, Julian. Um, I've been listening to a lot of him lately. He's a child prodigy, but it's very interesting music. A little bit out there. I like it. Not in that kind of way. I felt like it's hard. It's hard to put into words. I felt like I did feel like there was something different, real young. Because, like I said, I can remember hearing different sorts of sounds that would make me cry, very at a very young age. I'd hear songs that make me cry, even when I didn't understand what the words meant. The sound that made me cry. So, not a usually a prodigy. I think a child prodigy. I think it's someone like to sit down and master an instrument. It was almost like I was a prodigy in a sense self, in a sense kind of self in a way. I do always felt there was something a little bit different about the way my emotions, maybe what it is. So I don't know if it's not really a prodigy, I don't guess. But I always felt like that was different from other people. That and yeah, and sound is the big one, and also I'm not sure how you call it, but the energy of people connecting. That sense has always been really strong with me, whether it be in a good way or a bad way. I've always been able to feel. What did I say? Read the room, even as a little kid.
You feel like you have a superpower in that?
I don't know if it's superpower. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I don't know. I don't know. Oh, that's a good question. It's almost a magnet kind of thing that those of us that understand each other feel. And I'm not quite sure how to quantify that.
And you feel like you can observe that in a room?
Yeah. And then when it's really good and strong with people, it's really nice. I always thought I would have been a good therapist. I just didn't go to school for that. Waited a little late.
I'm assuming that music is therapeutic for you.
It is, but I've done regular therapy too, and
It's not enough.
and I'm not ashamed to say I have. Sometimes I don't know if it's therapeutic as much as it's torture. It's torture. Sometimes.
Is it the creation end of it?
It's that almost what I was talking about, where that germination process. That process is a process that's just torture. That I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I guess the need to do that so strongly, whether it's getting the music together for the show or just trying to figure out something I'm thinking of that I'm working on. I mean, I go off on tangents. Like right now, I'm really working on jazz guitar, and I get fixated on a particular thing, and I'll work it through till I get it to where I can do it. And that process is almost it borders on self-harm sometimes. but the need to do it is so strong I can't stop.
Once you get it, you hate it. Is that
It's not that. No, I move it. Then I'm fine with it. I just let it go, and it goes back into the thing that you can draw on later. But it may be a certain type of thing that I'm. It can be anything. Is what's interesting. It can be anything, but I get it in my head. Like I work at Sugaries too. For those of you who don't know, I have had experience of working at Sugaries and doing my job and have written something in my head during the day, and go home, and immediately write it down, like long form. But I've worked it out in my mind ahead of time. So it's that, and it can be literally anything. That I don't know where it comes from either. But until I get that worked out, I'm going to be obsessed with it.
does having a job like you have at Sugar Ace, and I don't exactly know your job, but
In the warehouse part,
is
mainly.
doing something that's, I don't know, mundane may
Yeah.
sound
I,
negative, but having that to get up to and go do that has nothing to do with creating music, do you think that helps your brain?
it helps me emotionally. I know. I know it does. Yeah. And my wife, if she was here, would tell you it does.
Why? How so?
Uh, it's just it's a Buddhist word called equanimity, and that's what I think about all the time, about that balance between the stuff. You got to have one to have the other. And I remember a really dear friend of mine. Uh, I was another off topic thing, but did church work in Memphis for a while, and this guy was from our church, and we became real good friends. And one night he looked at me and he said, "Paul, I could see you living in New York, L.A., writing music, or I could see you in New Orleans homeless." He said, I don't, I don't see you really in between." And at the time, this was in my early 20s, and I think probably the uh, the journey I was on was probably toward one or the other. Um, but what you were originally asking me, what does working a real job do? It keeps you from those. It's kept me. I shouldn't say what it does for other people, but for me, it keeps me from those really, really extremes because it forces you. What I found is really, really creative people need stability and they need a routine, or they can go down a down a rabbit hole. So that's what it helps me as I have a time I have to get up.
You can't stay up until 3 o'clock.
No, I can't. Mm-mm, mm-mm. What I used to do.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I probably wouldn't. I don't know that I've ever thought about that. So
Maybe that's what's missing from um, the struggling creative person is that they need that normal 9 to 5 routine so that their brain can balance out the other side.
yeah, I think it may be right. Yeah.
Yet, at some point in your life, maybe a younger point in your life, you feel like doing that 9 to 5 job is detrimental to your
Right.
creativity,
Well, it's like
or maybe pride.
our ego or whatever. A lot of us that are really creative have some mental mood disorders and things, and it's just the first thing they tell you. Drink lots of water. Get up at a regular time. Go to bed at a regular time. That sort of thing. Get exercise.
So you don't end up being like a mad scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
sense.
I've seen it go the other. I've seen it go the other way with some folks. I know. I really prefer that than being by myself, but I but I like to run the show.
Well, it's obvious you are running the show with the trio.
Yeah, and
to
I
me.
did with the thing in Oxford too.
But I mean, somebody has to.
Yeah, somebody happens to, and I've always been good at it, so I just do it. My problem comes when somebody doesn't want to do what I want them to do.
Now, how long have you been working with those guys in the trio?
I've known them. The bass player, I've known him since I started Thacker. So, and then the other guy I've known a little bit longer than that. So, but I've got what's great right now is if you ask me, if you just ask me right now, Paul, find a tenor sax player for something. I could go on my phone to go tenor sax and find 7 or 8 people that I could get hold of anywhere around in the general circle around where we live. So, same way, I have several people that I could do that with. So that's what makes it fun. Yes and no. Armchair quarterback. When it's at a real high level, yeah. Like the happiest I think I've ever been is the last time I was at the what's in New York, the Village Vanguard in New York City. So you get to that level, yeah, for sure.
And who was that?
At the Village, oh, it's the famous jazz club in Manhattan, the Village Vanguard. So last time I was in there, that would be something that I absolutely love.
Because of the
yeah.
What other types of music do you enjoy?
I do everything except for modern country. Stone me, I'm sorry. I just don't like that. But other than that, I love old country. But I like everything. Yeah, the Monkees. My mom and dad took me and my aunts. That had to have been, I think it was either 69 or 70 or something in that area.
Where were they playing?
At the Coliseum in Memphis. I don't even think they really were playing. I think they had musicians behind the curtain. Both my brothers are somewhat. I evidently come from a long line of musicians on mother's side of the family. A lot of them I never knew. We just didn't see them very much. My mother's mother was one of 9 or 10 kids and a couple of brothers. And so I don't know where my grandmother was in the order, but it was further down. And one of the oldest sisters' daughter is still alive. She's older than my mother. So I'd never met her before, and I think I met her here. I was playing for something, and Merle comes up to me and goes, "I know where you got that." And I go, who is this crazy? Who is this woman? And she goes, "You come from a line of," and so she was telling me about some of those. They had 2 of the daughters that played in juke joints with a black man that was a blues guitarist singer. They used to play juke joints up in Corinth area and Ripley back in I assume in the 30s and 40s maybe. So in fact, I've got a picture at home of the band, of the group. So evidently there was a lot of musicians on that side of the family, but I didn't know any of them. No, I just want to leave some more. I would think I'd rather. I think I'm more interested in leaving some written stuff behind.
Some written stuff.
Written music stuff.
Do you ever write lyrics to go with your
music?
Yeah.
It's the least favorite part for me.
Really?
Yeah. And I do lyrics. So lyrics come to me in little bits, and then I wish I could give that to somebody else and let them finish it. But one of my dad's sister was a poet, so I have some of that. Some of that. I've done a good bit of that. Yeah.
Do you love that?
I like that a lot. Yeah. When we lived in Memphis, put an ad in the paper or one of those, maybe it's one of those, one of the arts papers or something, and did some collaboration with several folks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I think I would have also been, I think I would have been good at film scoring too. Just didn't get in. Most of the people go to like USC and whatever that end up being in the film scoring business.
What did you go to school
I
to
went
do?
to Ole Miss in music, and then I did a couple of years at Memphis State for graduate school, but I didn't finish. But worked in the composition program. And when I grew up, there just wasn't as much to do. We had sports, and I was mediocre. And then you didn't have video games and all that. We had either rode your bike and then we started taking music lessons out there. So that's kind of was really introspective. So that ended up being something I was good at. I could go sit up in my room. Or go sit out on my mother's front porch and just play. Yeah.
What year did you graduate high school?
1977. Yeah, we had enough of us that we would one guy'd get mad and he'd go with the other one for a while. We would back and forth. So.
Did you play gigs in high school?
Yeah, yeah.
What was your band in high school?
We had a Steel Grit was one of them, and then we morphed into several different things that I can't even remember with different people. But we started. I think we had a band in by the 7th grade, 6th or 7th.
Who would have been your other bandmates?
David Gaines and Ray Collins and Ted Porter was in our first group, and David Ellis was with us some, and several other people. David Cowsers always was a big uh, mentor. I didn't know him that well, but before he passed away, we'd see each other quite a bit, and he was a really good player. So I lived in Memphis, so he was an inspiration. I had a student band director when I was in high school that really helped me, show me how about our arranging, and we had a jazz band, and he let me write some stuff that we played, so that was real big.
So you were in the band in high school?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Who was the band director at that time?
Phil Nanny.
Who was the assistant that helped?
Johnny McDonough, Tom's younger brother. So, and he was from New Albany. He ended up going to, I think he was at Ole Miss the same time I was too. So, yeah, he was very supportive and showed me a lot of things on the piano and stuff that I didn't know. I got in a band and traveled around for a while in the 80s. I think Melissa and I got married in 83. Don't kill me if I forgot. I think it was 83. So we lived in Memphis for a couple of years. So when my dad bought a trucking company is when I moved back to New Albany. So it had been in the late 80s. There was a guy, I don't remember, the Chase Brandon show. It was a guy that was from Ripley that that was his stage name, and he was booked at in Nashville. And we played mainly in Canada. So was just so strange, isn't it? We played little restaurant pub things all over Ontario. So, and then that's what as far out as I think Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. So I got to experience a lot of Canada.
Y'all were playing country music?
Uh-huh.
What's the farthest thing from jazz you've ever played? As in a band or group?
Probably that country music. I didn't listen to any of it, so we would come home and I would go out somewhere and I'd hear a song that we were playing regularly that I'd never heard before that we'd been playing because I couldn't bring myself to listen to it. Usually, for me, usually it's just walking away. Is being forced to go on vacations. My wife is we're good about making sure that we do that, and we usually will go somewhere where I can't bring an instrument, and even though I can do some of that German editing in my head, that can it continues to go on, but it really does help to go out in nature and do things and leave town, walk away from it. Be nice to do it for more than a week, so maybe soon we can do it for more than a week. I think 2 or 3 weeks would be really nice. The thing about music is our creativity or creative arts is that if you're meant to do it, you won't be able to stop. And whether or not that ends up being something you can make a living at it is not going to be the point of it. You have to do it, or you're going to die. You'll have to do it. So I just encourage people that feel that way to don't get discouraged, and to I always tell my kids, do the very best you can, no matter what you're doing, because you never know. And that's been my life story. Is you never know who you're gonna meet at that thing that you didn't want to do because it didn't pay or whatever, and you did a good job and you met somebody that calls you a year from now, 2 years. That's exactly what happened to me with the radio show. It ended up being that I played a gig with a guy that remembered me. So that's the thing. Do the best you can and network.